Hi, and welcome back to Security Best Practices Training. I'm Marianne, Training Specialist Extraordinaire. This video is our deep dive on password security. This one's really important, so fair warning, it may run a little longer than some of the other videos. Let's jump right in. Password security is super important because the vast majority of security breaches result from weak or stolen passwords. This may be a lack of complexity, but it can also result from not changing a password ever. I'll be honest, I've been guilty in the past of the second bullet point, saying half of users surveyed change their password only when it's forgotten. I've since become much more proactive about that sort of thing, and by the end of this, I hope you will be too. The last statistic is huge. Over 70% of employees are reusing passwords at work. Password repetition is a big problem that a lot of people do because it's easier to remember just one password. The problem is that when one account gets breached, then they all are breached. I want to go over a little more on common pitfalls like password repetition, but I want to start with this picture. This is from the mistaken Hawaii missile warning from early 2018. Right there, in plain sight, this computer's password is on display. Now, everyone who read the article and shared this goof picture knows that the password, warning point 2, is for that computer. Even without the article, it's pretty clear to anyone who visits the office how to access this very sensitive program. So here are a few common pitfalls, things a lot of people do for convenience, but pose significant security risks. We'll start with simple or common passwords. This may contain an obvious word to you, like your pet name or your birthday. You may have seen this dramatized on TV or in a movie where they have to get into the bad guy's computer and they look around and there's a picture of his boat right next to his computer. Could it be? It is. The name of the boat gets them access. While this is obviously fictionalized, it's still a thing that happens. Birthdays as PIN numbers are way more common than they should be. Don't make your password something easy to guess. There are also common words that may not be personal to the user. Password as a password is still pretty frequent. Login, admin, even dragon, which perhaps will lessen now that Game of Thrones has ended. Or variations on common words. Changing the O on password to a 0 is the oldest trick in the book, so it doesn't really make it much more difficult to guess. As mentioned before, password repetition is common and helps breaches spread fast. If you use the same password for everything, then your account credentials on a small independent app that may not put a lot of money into security end up being the same as your email or online banking. Conversely, sometimes the big guys like Yahoo or Apple, who you assume put millions into security, will be a juicier target, and people will put in more effort to attacking those. So even though you think you trust your accounts, keeping them separated by different passwords is important, no matter the size of the account. Again, if one is compromised, all are compromised. Password storage, now this is like the funny picture I showed before. Post-it notes are not secure. Yes, even if you hide it in a drawer or under your keyboard, it's pretty obvious what they're to. It's just whatever system is the closest. Excel docs are not secure either. Not only are they easily accessible if someone does get access to your data, but even for yourself, if the file corrupts and then you don't have your passwords, that could be an issue. Lastly, memorizing has complications. I just told you to use a unique password for every account. That's a lot of accounts. Keeping everything in your head is also not the best storage solution, and it has its own complications. We'll talk about good ways to handle this in a few, but first, I want you to think of the worst password you can come up with that meets these very common complexity requirements. Must be at least 8 characters long, contain 1 capital and 1 lowercase letter, contain 1 number, and at least 1 special character. I'll give you a few seconds to ponder and show you what I came up with. Okay, here's mine. Password 1 exclamation point. It's not a difficult password to guess, but it technically meets all those requirements. So keep in mind, even with these password policies in place, it's important that you and your fellow staffers still come up with creative and strong passwords. So let's talk about taking action and what you can do. Start by creating strong and unique passwords. You can use a password generator that will give you a randomized password, or I like using passphrases if they're allowed for your account. Passphrases are usually a mix of random words like yellow, cow, penguin, tree. And you can think of a yellow cow with a penguin and a tree. Or song lyrics or poetry stanzas are a good one to remember. Let's say you do, "Have I told you lately that I love you?" You could put it in capitals, put in the spaces, put in the question mark. You get a long, complex, yet easy to remember password. Unless, of course, you have the song lyrics posted next to your computer. Don't do that. People shouldn't be able to guess that random line of a song. Keep your passphrases long, and it'll be harder for a person or an algorithm to just work through all the possible combinations, but hopefully it'll be easier for you to remember. I do recommend changing passwords periodically. Sometimes you can be part of a breach and you don't know at first. This website I put here, haveitbeenpwned.com, is a good resource to check your email and see if it's been involved in a breach. It's not perfect, and if you've changed your password since a past breach, it can't tell you that. But if you pop up with a couple of breaches, it's time to change your password. Keep your passwords secret and never share. There's usually a workaround, especially if you're talking about a work password. Your IT administrator can grant access to your work computer or email if needed, so there really is never a good reason to give someone your password. You can always find a workaround. Lastly, I highly recommend using a password manager. These are services that will create, encrypt, and store long, strong, and unique passwords to all your accounts. Since memorizing has complications, all you have to remember is the master password. Most will also have a browser plugin, so you don't even have to type the master password in over and over. It just autofills your passwords for you, which is super helpful, and it makes it easy to change up your passwords periodically when they're all stored in the one place. The ones I have listed here I got from surveying our technicians, LastPass being the most common one. But all of these are good. Most of these have a free version, so I highly recommend trying it out for yourself. It's secure and convenient, which usually are on opposite sides of the spectrum. That's it for our password policy deep dive. Next, we're going to talk social engineering, scams, and more. I'll catch you next time.